Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. We're in December already. How did that happen? Now, as we begin to prepare for life in 2018, it seems that there's going to be no escaping cryptocurrencies and blockchain. Although 2017 was all about machine learning and AI, rest assured blockchain and cryptos will dominate conversations over the holiday season and well into 2018. Now, speaking of which, I recently came across a company called Dfinity, which is a decentralized world computer with unbounded capacity and an algorithmic governance. Essentially, an open cloud with better properties. Now, if that doesn't excite your tech bones, nothing will. But equally, if you are still a little confused about where this technology is heading, have no fear, because I've made it my mission to make the process as easy as possible for you all. So think of Dfinity as the next big development in blockchain, designed to power a Web 3.0 generation of applications, such as decentralized alternatives to the likes of Amazon, Dropbox, and all those other household names. But the value proposition here is that it's at a fraction of the cost of those traditional operations. But if you're still sat there left baffled around the current spate of ICOs and the introduction of high-profile celebrities such as Floyd Mayweather, Jamie Foxx, Paris Hilton, etc., have no fear, because today's guest is going to help you make sense of it all. So buckle up and hold on tight, because it's time to beam your ears all the way to California so we can speak with Dominic Williams, President and Chief Scientist at Dfinity. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Dom. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Thanks, pleased to be here. I'm President and Chief Scientist of Dfinity Stiftung, which is an organization dedicated to developing the technology behind the Dfinity network. And this is something that generates a very special kind of blockchain computer.
Now, obviously, I'm talking to you in California today, but obviously I could notice a Brit accent there. So how long have you been working in California?
I created a sort of MMO kids back in 2011, and in 2012 it got funded by VCs over here, and that's what brought me to America.
Fantastic. Now, I recently discovered you guys and I was incredibly excited at your plans at Dfinity to actually build a public blockchain computer with unlimited scalability that uses algorithmic governance to evolve over time. But for anyone listening today that's hearing about Dfinity for the very first time, can you just help set the scene and help them visualize exactly what it is that you're building, what problems that you're solving, and why this is such a big game changer?
Sure. So we're launching an open network, a bit like the Bitcoin or Ethereum networks, that will create a blockchain computer that is completely unlike anything around at the moment. This new blockchain computer will have very good performance, it'll have enough capacity for everyone, and it'll also make it very easy to develop hosted systems with the aim of making, genuine mass adoption possible.
Now, Dfinity is designed to power a Web 3.0 generation of applications, such as decentralized alternatives to the familiar names now of Amazon, Dropbox, etc., but all at a fraction of the cost of those traditional operations. But again, for anyone listening that's hearing the phrase Web 3.0 for the first time, can you just help bring them up to speed with what to expect and the role that Dfinity will actually play in this new era?
Sure. So actually, the Dfinity computer will have two main roles. One is actually just, enabling people to create better business systems, in that, you'll be able to develop business systems for less. They'll be more secure, more reliable, more interoperable. In that sense, Dfinity will be used to host things like HR systems, medical records, ordering systems, you name it, any kind of business system that you can imagine. But on the other hand, it'll enable the creation of new types of what we call open source business, using autonomous software. These open source businesses will compete with traditional intermediaries and digital service providers like, Uber, eBay, even Dropbox, since you mentioned it. with this new kind of model, regards to a kind of decentralized Dropbox, the entire application will be pulled straight off the Dfinity computer into your web browser. So I saw an engineer create a kind of proof of concept decentralized Dropbox in a couple of days on our testnet. So it's incredible what's going to be possible with this technology.
And also, in the next few weeks, I believe you're going to be releasing a white paper on the threshold relay and probabilistic slot consensus. But can you share the details of that and also the plans to offer a virtually instantaneous interaction between clients, and whether it's in the area of financial transactions, file sharing, or data transfer? And it actually documents it with the code and cannot be hacked or even modified by malicious third parties. I mean, it's incredibly exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, so, if you look at, if you dug into the internals of the technology that, makes the Dfinity computer possible, actually there's many, many new protocols and cryptography schemes and other techniques. And so, people should expect a series of white papers from us. I hope by the end of 2018, we'll probably get double figures even. But threshold relay and probabilistic slot consensus are two of the early protocols that I worked on, going back, to early 2015. Threshold relay is a protocol that, in a decentralized network, produces the world's first trustless random beacon. And that probably sounds like a very funny thing, a random beacon. But it's really just a system for producing a stream of random numbers, genuinely random numbers. And the reason that's so important for us is that most of our protocols, and remember there are a lot of different protocols involved in the Dfinity computer, a lot of our protocols are driven by random numbers. So, it's fair to say, I think, that the whole Dfinity project wouldn't have been possible without threshold relay. We absolutely depend upon threshold relay to produce this stream of random numbers, and we do it in a way that's completely unmanipulable, unpredictable, and unstoppable. And the stream of random numbers effectively is the engine that drives the network forward. I was trying to explain how, obviously, but it is interesting, I think, to note that, for those people out there wondering how on earth you can create an open network protocol that sort of conjures this great big virtual computer in cyberspace, the Dfinity computer, how on earth can all that work? In truth, it's an extremely complex thing, and you need to spend a lot of time with the protocols and cryptography and so on to understand what's going on. But one of the key things you can take away is that the whole thing is driven by random numbers. And that's where threshold relay comes in. And the reason it's called threshold relay, if you wondered where such a sort of wonderful name comes from, threshold refers to threshold encryption schemes. We use the thing called BLS, which is a bilinear pairings protocol. And we have these different groups of nodes in the network that that create a threshold signature on the previous group's signature, and they sort of relay between these random groups, running this threshold cryptography to generate the random numbers. Probabilistic slot consensus is a third generation blockchain protocol which is driven by these random numbers that increases security and performance at the same time. So we're getting a much more secure network that's also much more performant. So currently, for example, our test network finalizes computations that are submitted to it 600 times faster than Ethereum does today. So it's really providing an enormous speed up on today's technology.
And like I was saying a few moments ago, it really is an incredibly exciting space to be in at the moment. It just feels like it felt when the internet first came on the scene all those years ago. But can I ask, what is your standpoint on the current spate of ICOs out there and the introduction of high-profile celebrities such as Floyd Mayweather, Jamie Foxx and Paris Hilton to try and add the credibility to them?
Look, I mean, I think the whole ICO thing is a mixed bag.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll say is that there are a lot of positive things potentially about ICOs, and that's even true about the DAO. If you go back to the DAO, for listeners that aren't familiar with the DAO, it was a kind of sort of decentralized investment fund that was running on Ethereum a year ago. And unfortunately, it had a bug in the smart contracts that it used to run. And a whole lot of money got stolen by some hackers. And everyone said, oh, this is rubbish and so on. But actually, I think history will be very kind to the DAO, and it'll be, recorded as the first example of a decentralized financial institution, right? Even though it, sadly had a bug in the code and went wrong. Similarly, I think ICOs, are a very important democratizing force in the sense that, look, if you look at Ethereum, back in 2014, a lot of us invested in Ether at 29 cents, right?
Yeah.
And the project, as everybody knows, was, fantastically successful. And I think it's, standing at almost $500 in Ether now. So, a huge number of people around the world became rich as a result of investing in this, really exciting technology project at the ground level. And in that sense, it was an immensely democratizing force. And, there's no doubt Ethereum, if you like, set the gold standard for ICOs. And it showed everybody what was possible. And, yes, you, an ordinary investor, could make even better returns than venture capitalists in Silicon Valley do. Right. Now, of course, the thing is that if you ever do something like that, wherever people see quick returns, a lot of people saw the opportunity to create projects to collect money from people that wanted similar returns to those experienced in the Ethereum project. So I would honestly say that 95% plus of today's ICO projects have no chance of success and have simply been conceived to collect money from investors. Right? Yeah. That's, look, I mean, if you want to anybody out there that's wondering how on earth do you distinguish the good projects from bad projects, I'd say that, if somebody's claiming they're going to create some new kind of blockchain computer system like Dfinity, well, you need to know that that's a very non-trivial task. And the only way you're going to succeed, or the only way the developers are going to succeed is, if they have the requisite skills. And so you should be looking at the team. Do they have, professor and postdoc level research scientists who've got previous achievements in the areas of cryptography and, distributed computing protocols and things like that? And if they haven't got that kind of team, you've got to ask yourself why they're going to be able to create this amazing system. Truthfully, 95% of these projects have no chance whatsoever of success, and they're just conceived to collect money from investors. Some projects have, given themselves more credibility by hiring what I'd call Twitter scientists. So they pay Twitter scientists to become advisors, and it creates a kind of social proof, like, oh, look, see these guys on Twitter that everyone follows who tweet about things all day. They're our advisors, so we must know what we're doing. And people didn't look behind that and think, well, hang on, these advisors are getting a share of the ICO proceeds, right? And now it's got even more egregious, and now, of course, you've got these kind of like, high-profile celebrities. Honestly, if you see Paris Hilton going out there and promoting an ICO, that's probably I don't want to. I would look more closely. Like, Paris Hilton is not going to develop, pretty and wonderful as she is, she's not going to be developing this kind of technology, right? So, you need to look beyond Paris and her illustrious videos that she's created over her career and all that kind of stuff. Alluring as it is, you need to look beyond Paris and try and dig into who are the research scientists and super talented engineers and that are going to deliver this vision, right? And do the leaders of the project have a good, trustworthy record of entrepreneurialism and management and so on. So don't go for the Twitter scientists, who are advisors. Don't go for the celebrity promoting it. Dig further and try and see if there's a team. And by the way, even if you see a team as well listed on the website, don't just take it at face value. Make sure that team is actually employed full-time and they're not just contractors or something like that.
That's fantastic advice and very diplomatically delivered too. You did fantastic there. Now, back to blockchain. I think many people are just beginning to understand blockchain now, but how do you see it evolving? And what do you think the future of blockchain is? Is it, in your eyes, right across the digital landscape there?
Well, I think you firstly need to separate out Bitcoin, which could be exceptional in some special regards from the rest of the industry. So Bitcoin has zero chance of being a currency, okay? This is just the propaganda. Currencies need to be stable, right? Price stable. And if they're volatile, they're completely useless, So forget Bitcoin being that, but what it might be is a kind of digital gold. And if you think that real metal gold has a cap of about $7 trillion, that is, if you've got all the gold in the world, be worth about $7 trillion. If it's possible that enough people believe that digital gold is preferable to yellow metal, Bitcoin might have some serious growth ahead of it. And I would caution anyone wanting to get involved that this thing is going to be horribly volatile, right? And it's only ever going to be any use as a kind of digital store of value. But, if enough people believe in it, it is possible that, we could see enormous growth. It's also possible that in the next crash, and there will be another crash coming, everybody just loses faith in Bitcoin and then it goes to nothing, or just, it never gets beyond where it is now. I have no idea what's going to happen. But anyway, that's a rather different thing. And it's, Bitcoin may be this digital gold thing. The rest of the industry, though, I think is going to have to compete on utility, real utility. And that's very, very different to what's happening now. Today, people are just inventing blockchains or things that look like blockchains. Sometimes they're not even blockchains. Things like IOTA, it can never work in practice, right?
Yeah.
But it's up and running, and even though it has a central server running it all, and this dude called Come From Beyond orchestrating everything, it looks enough like a blockchain that it's investable, right? Today you can create something that looks like a blockchain or promise a blockchain, and everyone will think, wow, it's a blockchain, it's valuable, and they'll want to invest in it, right?
Yeah, because it's gone crazy, hasn't it, IOTA today? I think it's up like 40% or something.
Yeah. I mean, I won't get into the technical details, but it's, in my view, kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous system, and if anybody who thinks that IOTA is going to support the world's IoT devices is gravely mistaken. Yeah. Okay, but nonetheless, it seems to be running, and people see that it has a price, and they want to invest in blockchain and make money, get some quick returns. So for the moment, IOTA is flying high, and no doubt Come From Beyond is stinking rich, and probably is buying a whole bunch of, James Bond villain-esque, outside Moscow, wherever he resides in Russia. But at some point, the industry is going to move beyond it's a blockchain, and people are going to start asking what the utility is. And most blockchain projects out there today, when you really dig into them, cannot provide any real-world utility. However, blockchain can provide real-world utility, and it'll be the systems that manage to provide the real-world utility that eventually succeed.
Now, you mentioned the real world there, because I think you recently said that the vastly performant decentralised network could actually go on to replace today's unnecessarily complicated IT systems on centralised infrastructure. I mean, can you explain to listeners in layman's terms this level of change that is coming, and also the opportunities that could bring with it?
So the existing IT stack is very, very broken, and Dfinity plans to improve it, provide a much improved alternative. The first thing to understand is that the traditional IT stack was never designed as one thing. Mm-hmm. It evolved. The reasons that it has evolved as it has have much more to do with commercial incentives and organic growth than anything to do with good design. Okay? Yeah. So, today, if you're creating a business system, often it'll look much like another business system, but in fact it'll be complete custom. You'll have a database, you'll have a web server, you'll have some kind of middleware stuff, you'll have, your chosen developer stack, maybe that's Visual Studio and Microsoft.NET and so on. It doesn't really matter whether you're using Java or LAMP or the Microsoft stack. It's the same kind of thing, right? You've got the same basic shape, web server, middleware, database, and so on. But nonetheless, although all of the IT systems we build today have the same basic shape, they're all completely custom and hugely complex, hugely fragile, and hugely insecure. I like to compare them to Rube Goldberg machines, that kind of mousetrap type thing. Yeah. You kind of build it, it's unstable, it's expensive to develop, and then it goes wrong all the time, and you need this sort of team of engineers to keep on tinkering with it, to keep it on the road. You've got a kind of web server, right, or some other kind of server that provides an interface to the system for users. That server can get rebooted, right? And so because it can get rebooted, you better make sure that you copy all the data into a database. Sure. So that's an example of a complexity. Because the server can get rebooted, you have to copy your data into a database to make sure it doesn't get lost. Yeah. But you might imagine in the future there was a computer like the Dfinity computer that's unstoppable and never gets rebooted. It's this huge unstoppable virtual computer in cyberspace. And that would enable you to create systems without needing a database, right? You could just write the software, and that software would just run forever, and you wouldn't need a database. You wouldn't need to worry about copying your data into a database. So that would enable you to simplify things compared to the existing tech stack. But what you need to know is that the existing tech stack isn't very good. And it's not been designed, it's evolved. And, for example, if you take something like a database, the database vendor will deliberately add complex new features for two reasons. One, he'll want companies to make use of these complex features that are proprietary, that are unique to their database system, so that company cannot easily migrate to another system, right?
Yeah.
So they'll add all these kind of, complex features, almost like bait, so that companies building on top use them and become sort of stuck there. They also realize that by making the systems complex, developers, systems engineers and software developers, will invest time learning about those features, and firstly will therefore not want to go to another different system because they don't want to have to invest a whole lot of more time learning something different, but also will make use of this complexity and realize they've got job security from it. Because by building a hyper complex, unstable system, these engineers get themselves jobs for life, right? And we all know about, Billy the engineer isn't here today. Does anyone know what the hell's going wrong with this system? Right?
Yeah.
We've all seen it. And so, actually, to some extent, the traditional IT stack is deliberately designed badly. It's kind of grown up that way, and, there's this enormous stack, and there's Amazon Web Services. We have a vision for how this whole thing can be simplified. Can create business systems on Dfinity with much, much less effort, that those systems will be much, much simpler to maintain and administer. Obviously, all this involves reductions in cost, right?
Yeah.
Because, by the way, the cost of computation or the cost of hosting, wherever it is, only comprises a small fraction of the total cost of ownership of an IT system. The total cost of ownership of an IT system has all to do with the human capital involved, right? And we're going to make it dramatically simpler to create business systems. And although the cost of computation on the Dfinity computer will be greater, actually the overall costs are going to come right down because the real costs involved in IT systems are created by the human capital. But, the amazing thing is that not only are we going to bring down the total cost of ownership of IT systems by simplifying things, those IT systems are also going to be more secure, more reliable, and more interoperable. You should expect not only this, performant virtual computer in cyberspace, the Dfinity computer in cyberspace, with enough capacity for everyone, but also, a whole stack of tooling that goes with that, which will make it much, much simpler to create business systems. And that's the vision. Dfinity doesn't really think about, we're going to produce a blockchain and it's going to be valuable because it's a blockchain. It's true that inside Dfinity there's some third generation blockchain technology. There's also a lot of other cryptography and other protocols too. Dfinity focuses on the utility it can provide in the world. And as regards traditional IT, we're going to provide a far superior alternative to the traditional IT stack. And, we want people to be able to get up and running, developing, more reliable, more secure, more interoperable systems on Dfinity in minutes. And it's going to be so much easier to develop and debug and maintain and administer these systems that the total cost of ownership compared to creating the equivalent system on the traditional IT stack is going to be a fraction of what it was. And that's the utility that we want to deliver to the world. In addition, of course, we also want to make it that those same tools will make it possible to create fully autonomous open source businesses that, of the kind we discussed, decentralized Uber, decentralized Dropbox, decentralized eBay, that kind of thing.
Wow, the scale of that is just phenomenal, isn't it? It's a real game changer.
It is, and that's why I think, it's very ambitious. We're building, and it's not just enough to develop the technology, by the way. If you want to have a network that hosts millions of businesses, you better make sure it doesn't go wrong, right? Yeah. So you need a pretty big organization to support that. So we sort of refer to it as a sort of NASA for decentralization. And we call it a NASA for decentralization because we're, constantly growing this team of sort of very senior research scientists and engineers.
Now, it was only a few months ago or so that the world was getting incredibly excited about Bitcoin being projected to hit $4,000. And as the world moves at a breathtaking speed, we're now hit $10,000 as we record this episode today. And I also have a feeling that Bitcoin and investing in coins such as Ripple, Ethereum and Litecoin, etc., would have been the topic over many a dinner table at Thanksgiving over there in the US. So I've got to ask, do you think this era-changing cryptocurrency revolution will enter the mainstream in 2018 and where you see it all heading? Or is there just going to be a lot of people losing a lot of money?
Oh, there's going to be a lot of people losing a lot of money, and there's going to be a lot of people making a lot of money.
Yeah.
The problem with something like Bitcoin is that the value is predicated on demand, right? The supply is fixed. Therefore, if the demand goes up, the price goes up. But once the price starts falling, it's very likely that the demand will go away and the price will fall pretty catastrophically too. Yeah. Because a lot of people sitting on enormous gains in Bitcoin, and when they see the bear market set in, they're going to sell their Bitcoin to realize their gains. And people that invested at the higher prices, are going to lose money unless they hold on, and maybe there'll be another kind of bubble in the future. But Bitcoin, I think, is really a special case. Maybe it'll become digital gold. Maybe it won't.
Yeah.
If it becomes digital gold, it could be going up a lot further. I don't know the answer. It's equally possible, in my view, that Bitcoin goes on to some greater height and becomes digital gold, and that eventually, people get sick of the volatility and it goes to nothing. I don't know. I don't know the answer. With regards to the broad collection of other blockchains, yeah, I think a winter will arrive and people will lose a lot of money on them. However, in the long term, I'm very, very bullish. I think we're going to see $1 trillion chain. But to get there, we're going to need to see something like a blockchain computer that achieves real mass adoption. And to do that, it's going to have to deliver real utility. So, at Dfinity, we try not to think about the market. We haven't done an ICO because we don't want the regulatory disruption, lawsuits that organizations like Tezos have that have lost control of this $1 billion of cryptocurrency they raised off Joe Public. We don't want that. We just want to get on with the science and working towards what we believe will deliver this real value that involves a lot of kind of cold hard science and engineering.
And that's really refreshing to hear too. So before I let you go, can you just help the listener visualize what the future of the cloud will look like with Dfinity? And also how a world computer system that scales this capacity using new crypto has the governance using the blockchain nervous system.
Yeah, sure. So, in terms of what Dfinity is, essentially it's like a giant mainframe computer in cyberspace that everyone can share. And you'll be able to develop hosted systems using an IDE, an integrated development environment that loads inside your web browser. So there's going to be very little friction for new people who want to experiment with the Dfinity world computer system. They'll be able to put an address into their web browser or install a Chrome extension or something like that, and they'll have the IDE, and there'll be some very friendly systems that take them through developing hosted systems. Of course, if you have a kind of world computer system in cyberspace that's highly performant and has enough capacity for everyone, this is a very, very powerful world-changing thing. And, there are potentials for misuse as well as, the gains that can come, from the utility it delivers. And misuse might be, for example, that ISIS decides they want to use it to run a slave market or something horrible, or an assassination market. Al-Baghdadi creates some kind of market and he capitalizes it, and people can post bounties for, rewards for people that are going to, who assassinate somebody. And, if you can prove you assassinated someone by uploading the photos that only you could have had, then you get the reward that Baghdadi and these ISIS dudes have put up there. Now, and you can be sure you get it because, of course, it's always sort of smart contract technology, right? So there's no kind of cheating allowed. Now, this would be a terrible thing. So that's an example of what would be possible currently on Ethereum. I think these kind of problems become much more serious with something like Dfinity, which really can be used for a lot of practical purposes that aren't there at the moment. So one of the unique aspects of the Dfinity system is that it has this thing called the blockchain nervous system. which is an algorithmic governance system that does a range of things, actually. So anybody can submit proposals with a fee to the blockchain nervous system, and it will approve or reject them after some period of time. It can even do it quite quickly. A governance proposal will be something like, hey, this is a nefarious system. This is an ISIS slave market. And the blockchain nervous system actually, in as much as, it's a thinking system, it's a decentralized thinking system, its objective is to increase the value of definitives. And they, as much as anything, are a proxy for adoption of the network. So clearly, most businesses don't want to co-host with an ISIS slave market, right? So if a proposal goes into the blockchain nervous system that this system should be, frozen because it's really an ISIS slave market, and here is all of the evidence, we fully expect that to be adopted. So a lot of this governance stuff's pretty straightforward, like don't do evil, right? Yeah. Don't do anything that the majority of humanity would regard as bad, and therefore might be dissuaded from building on the Dfinity computer buy, right? Yeah. But there's also more complex stuff it does. Proposals can go in to change the economics of the system to optimize it, make it more efficient. Proposals can go in to patch a security flaw in the software. It basically can upgrade the software transparently. Users of the network interact with it like it were a cloud, and that cloud can update its own software seamlessly, so users of the system aren't interrupted or disrupted. And the blockchain nervous system will manage that process, for example. So we refer to the Dfinity network as being fully adaptive. And that essentially means that all aspects of it are subject to the algorithmic governance of the blockchain nervous system. I think in the end, people are going to laugh at these kind of notions of the code is law and things like that, because we think that you need this algorithmic governance system. We need the blockchain nervous system to make sure that the Dfinity computer isn't put to nefarious uses, and also to ensure the good management of the network, the correct configuration of economic parameters over time, the efficient upgrading and development and evolution of the network, and so on. So I think in the end, most serious networks will have an equivalent system.
Well, a huge thank you for taking the time to come on today. But before I do let you go, finally, can I just ask for anyone listening that wants to find out more or ask a few questions to yourself or a member of your team, can you remind us of your website or how they can contact you guys?
Actually, in my case, I don't really check email because I just get too much. But the best way to reach out to me is on, through sort of chat medium. Like, for example, my Twitter makes it possible for anyone to send me a message. But generally, there's a Rocket chat. We dropped Slack because it was insecure and people were trying to trick people into sending them cryptocurrency and stuff. So we moved from Slack to Rocket Chat. You can get in touch with us that way. Moreover, we generally always have representatives at the big conferences. Like, we had a few people at DevCon. Yeah. Also, for example, we're at the more academic kind of conferences. So I'm actually on the board of Stanford P-Base, which is Stanford University's sort of blockchain conference. And we'll also be speaking at Stanford P-Base. And, a lot of our research scientists and engineers will be there. So people like Timo Hanke, who created ASIC Boost, or Ben Lin, who's the elf from BLS cryptography, or Manoush, who's worked on a lot of, traditional distributed computing consensus protocols and so on. So if you go to those kind of conferences, you'll be able to see us there. We've also got some incredible new hires that haven't been announced yet. So, for example, Martin Beasy, who's working on the UASM project, which will probably be used or possibly be used by Ethereum. He works at Dfinity. Find guys like him at the P-Base conference early next year. But there's other people too, really big hires we're not going to be able to announce quite yet from the field of virtual machines and WASM particularly. So if you can, any kind of researchers or senior engineers that are interested in getting involved in Dfinity, I urge them to reach out to us through whatever means they can, and also certainly look out for us at the more academic conferences.
But Twitter scientists, they needn't apply, right?
Well, there's nothing wrong with being a Twitter scientist in that Twitter is, if you have a big Twitter following, you can monetize it these days. And that's why often these guys are now doing more tweeting than science. But, look, I encourage everyone to be involved in social media, but at least, you won't, there's no advisor roles going at Dfinity for Twitter scientists.
Fantastic. Like you said a few moments ago, it really is a powerful, world-changing tech that we're talking about here. But as you also said, really, with great power comes great responsibility. So a big thank you for sharing your story today and for being transparent about it too. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
One of the things that I'm very, very aware of is that phrases such as cryptos, blockchains, ICOs are actually baffling many people out there. And there's a lot of talk about the digital transformation. And yes, technology is going to be responsible for removing a lot of roles, and it's also going to be responsible for creating a lot of new roles. But bringing everybody up to speed so that everybody can come along for the ride and don't get left behind is imperative now. So through this show, I want to try and demystify a lot of this technology and give everyone a greater understanding. And I think today's guest did a great job of doing just that. And for anyone investing in cryptocurrencies and getting that fear of missing out of the next big thing and wanting to jump in headfirst into investing into things such as IOTA, I think Dominic made some great points there that we should all just stop and think. Does that next big thing have a viable product? Are they surrounding themselves with influencers and Twitter scientists or even celebrities? Because these are actually big alarm bells. But make no mistake, blockchain is going to transform businesses across all industries. I can actually promise you that. I'm going to stick my head on the line here. So don't think it's something you can just forget about and it'll never mean anything to you, because it is a real game changer. But also, don't fear it, because together we can learn how it can actually create opportunities for your business and, most importantly of all, open a competitive edge. But hey, that's just me rambling again. What are your thoughts and insights? You know the drill by now, gang. Emails go to techblogwriter@outlook.com. Tweets to yours truly here at Neil C. Hughes. And don't forget, we're now on Spotify and Mixcloud too, so there's no escaping me. Seriously though, I'm having a bit of a mad half hour, so I better make my excuses and go. I know there are hundreds of online videos that you'd probably subscribe to, so many music playlists that you could be listening to, and hundreds of podcasts. But the fact that you chose to spend a few minutes here with me today means the world. So a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.